Hey, good people. You might be asking, why on earth am I painting a tree? Well, I just finished up the Home and Garden Show at the Southtown Expo Center there, Mountain America, and it was absolutely fabulous. But one of the questions that came up, and the one that I want to talk to you about today, has to do with planting depth of a tree. I know this one's not going to get planted. This one's good and dead. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to illustrate to people what is the point at which we should be planting our trees and why does it make any difference? Because the reality of it is roots need a couple of things. Roots need nutrients. That's why we fertilize them. Even though they feed themselves through the photosynthesis process, they still need nutrients. And they need water. That seems kind of obvious to me. It's not always obvious to a lot of people. I get comments that tell me that don't need to water a tree. Yeah, well, welcome to Utah, where we don't get enough water typically to sustain trees. That's why you don't see a lot of trees out there in the wide open spaces. They're only up in the mountains. The third thing, and why I'm painting the tree, is oxygen. Yeah, I know, you think trees give off oxygen. Well, you'd be right. They give off oxygen through the leaves. That's part of the process. That's why we love trees so much. Among other things, they give us oxygen. But the roots also need oxygen. There's an oxygen exchange. They get the soil gets the oxygen from the surrounding air, but they never should be exposed to the air. The oxygen exchange actually comes out of the soil. But what I'm illustrating by this little painting project that I'm doing is everything that is yellow here should be above the ground. Yep, that's right, above the ground. There is a demarcation, if you will, that happens as you come down the trunk of a tree, not to be confused with any kind of bud graft or anything like that, but as you're coming down the trunk of the tree, it begins to swell. And where it swells and transitions into roots, well, that is where the soil line should be. So in other words, the yellow that I've painted there, I should be able to see when I go out to do a consultation, when I go out to determine whether or not everything that's happened with the tree was done correctly. When planting time came, I should be able to see that yellow all above the surrounding ground level. Okay, now why? Well, if the tree is planted too deep, particularly here where we have really heavy clay soil and it doesn't have a whole lot of oxygen in it, when we plant it too deep, my hand's representing now the soil level, then what ends up happening is those root systems are going to suffocate. Whew, that's not good. That is not good. And that's what happens when either you put extra soil on top of an existing root system, you put way too much mulch on top of an existing root system, or you plant the tree too deep. It's all about whether or not there's a good oxygen exchange in the roots. So today I'm going to talk about three things, and that's thing one when it comes to planting. Three things. Thing one, plant at the right depth. Plant so that you are putting trunk above the ground, roots below the ground. And that crown is thing one. Thing two is take into consideration that this root mass has been in a container or in a root ball for long enough that these roots have started to grow in a circular motion around the root mass. Not good, not good. It doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of difference right now, and it really doesn't. But as this begins to grow, this being the roots. You know, I want a root that goes out straight like that one. I do not want roots that grow round like these, because what happens as they continue to grow and they get bigger and bigger around, they can, and if you've watched my videos for any time, you'll notice I, every once in a while, will throw in a video about a girdling root. Well, this is what a girdling root is. It's a root that is growing around when it is quite young, and it just continues to gain in girth. The trunk's gaining in girth, the root's gaining in girth. This begins to strangulate, tourniquet kind of strangulation of the roots or the trunk of the tree. So that's thing 2. The third thing I want you to remember is the depth that you're planting, or the depth that you're digging your hole. The distance from the bottom of my yellow line here and the bottom of the root mass, that's how far I'm digging my hole, okay? Sometimes there will be a little extra soil on the bottom. I'm okay with that, because it's the soil that's in the container, because it's the soil that's at the bottom of the root ball. That tree's already established in there, and I don't want you ripping a lot of roots by trying to discover, as it were, the bottom. That's not nearly as important as knowing where this is. That's going to take some teasing away, some gentle manipulation of the soil to find this location. But now the third thing is I'm not going to dig my hole any deeper than the distance from here to the bottom of the root mass, or the bottom of the container, or the bottom of the root ball, okay? And right now I'm not addressing specifically bare root, even though we're looking at a bare root here. I'm not talking about planting bare root trees. Specifically, today's conversation is about planting trees that come in a container or a root ball. You're gonna plant it in a hole that you've dug 2 to 3 times as wide as the root mass, but no deeper than that root mass. Okay, so that's your thing 1, thing 2, and thing 3. 1, do not bury the trunk in the soil. The crown flare is your demarcation. That's where the soil level should be. Thing 2, girdling roots. Don't allow girdling roots. Tease them out. Get them going out away from the tree. And thing 3, make sure that you're not digging a hole any deeper than the bottom of that container, root mass, root ball. And you should have a pretty good chance that that tree is going to survive. There are other tips that'll come on down the road, but that one is a big one that came up in the course of the conversation during my spring home show presentation. If that was helpful, why don't you give the bell a ring, a click, a sign up, sign on. And speaking of signing up, I have a newsletter that comes out every Sunday morning, and classes that are available as well. Thanks for following along, and let's have a beautiful spring. It's only a week away.